everyone for joining our Detection Engineering Dispatch number 2. Yay. We're joined by Christina and Kevin from our Forge team. Our Forge team builds our detections and is our research team, helping make sure to stay up to date on all of the latest threats. Our biweekly live sessions that are happening called Detection Engineering go over our detection engineering best practices, different trending threats. Some of them will be hands-on experiences and workshops. So next week, not next week, it's July 6th, we're going to be having a capture the flag experience based in Snowflake and using CrowdStrike FDR data, and you'll be working in Splunk, or working in Anvilogic. So come on over. Our Splunk one will come out after Comp 23, so in a couple months. So that'll be exciting for everyone to join that as well. So we'll also have some Ask Me the Experts, so stay up to date on what's coming down. We do this bi-weekly, so we have some really good things lined up for you. Really excited for you to join. This is all about helping you fine-tune your skills, build a like-minded community. So built by detection engineers for detection engineers. And today we're going to be diving into how you can master threat detections and build behavioral-based detections. So you can use the chat function to submit any questions below throughout the session, and we'll make sure to ask those questions of the presenters. So feel free to do it at any time and we'll have that jump in. And I'm going to hand it off to Christina and Kevin to introduce themselves. Kevin, take it away.
Hey, thank you, Jade. Hello, everyone. I'm a threat researcher at Anvilogic. I'm happy to speak with you all today. I got my bachelor's degree from Syracuse University. Prior to starting Anvilogic, I was a cybersecurity analyst at a financial institution. I played a lot of different opportunities in digital forensics, operations, and detection engineering, and I am based in Albany, New York.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Christina Westfall, and I'm a detection engineer here at Anvilogic. I'm currently pursuing my master's at SANS Technology Institute, and I've worked in IT and security in various capacities for the past 15 years or so, and I'm coming to you today from New Jersey.
Christina, that is awesome. I just had learned that you're getting your master's in the SANS Technology Institute. What specifically are you getting it in?
Information security engineering.
Very cool. Well, very excited for you both to join us today. Thank you for presenting for us.
We're happy to be here, and thanks for everyone for joining again. So yeah, today's session, hopefully to help you guys all master threat detection. Today we'll be focusing on how to build behavioral-based detections by focusing on understanding adversarial actions that are demonstrated through their tactics, techniques, and procedures. So just give a rundown of our agenda today. We'll start off by just giving a basic foundational talk. Starting with the pyramid of pain. This sets the groundwork for how we view creating detections with long-term strategic value. Then we'll discuss another important aspect of our detection approach, which is the hunting index. And from there, we'll walk through a demonstration of an adversary campaign, picking out those behaviors into an individual detection level and how it comes together in a full sequence for you to view those as for creation of a scenario-based alert. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with a quick peek of our Stormbreaker emulation tool. Okay, so the pyramid pane. I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with the image created by Dave Bianco. Fantastic write-up and how to kind of put in perspective how security is viewed. So basically, our stance is we want to emphasize the value of detections and how the industry at large has had a focus on the bottom portions of the pyramid. So trivial, easy, and simple sections that are easily changed and that have a limited lifespan, resulting in a security posture that's constantly degrading. So we want to explore this concept in great detail in our first detection engineering session on YouTube. So please follow us there to check out all our sessions. Yeah, and then going back to our detection approach. So instead of going at the bottom of the pyramid where everything's easily changed, we want to flip it, just as eloquently said by Missy Elliott. Flip it, reverse it. We want to start our approach at the very top, so the TTP section, which helps us to not chase those noisy, those dynamically changing alerts. And our aim should be to create those high fidelity detections that hold long-term strategic value, and also so we're not constantly inundating our SOC with a bunch of alerts causing alert fatigue. So, and then another aspect we want to talk about is our hunting index. This helps ingest the warning signals. So think of those as the individual level identifiers. Those that would otherwise be noisy. This index helps us to provide event correlations to identify events of interest like those TTPs. This index also helps to put us in a proactive and not reactive state, where we can conduct targeted hunts, as we already normalized the data and vetted the data. So you can do hunts across different data domains that may not have been possible if you haven't had the data normalized. We can also spend less time tuning alerts that could have been potentially true positives. So I guess with that out of the way, I think we can just jump into some detections. Just so you have an idea of our framework and approach, we'll examine the latest DFIR report, which documents a network intrusion aimed at deploying a MBR wiper malware. This report provides a lot of detail and insight into adversary activity, which you can use to create detections and sequence them into based on attack techniques. Our expert detection engineer, Christina, will walk through a section of the intrusion step by step, along with recommended atomic level threat identifiers.
Thank you, Kevin. So here, DFIR has provided us with a summary of the attack with the different steps. So let's talk about that. We see TrueBot delivering is delivered via a malicious document. And then once that document is opened, we see some C2 communications and the loading of flawed grace within several minutes. There are some persistence and evasion efforts via scheduled tasks and disabling Windows Defender. And so we have some individual detections that we'll look for the activity outlined here, starting with the delivery of the malicious payload. So we have a use case here for Ingress tool transfer, where we're detecting the delivery of the payload itself. So in this example, we're using Sysmon Event 11 for detection. You could also use Windows Event 4656 if you have file auditing enabled. And what we're looking for here is the event with file extensions that are associated with malicious documents and other payload delivery attacks. We have some base filtering to cut down on noise and known false positives, followed by grouping the events by host and file path within a 1-second bucket. And then we do some statistical analysis just to further cut down on noise, so we're only seeing rare events. And so you might be looking at a detection like this and thinking, okay, that's noisy. That is potentially going to generate a lot of false positives if we're looking at this, if we're getting an alert each time this is coming up. So rather than examine every signal that this detection would be producing, we're sending it onto our hunting index for correlation and normalization. So this is going to be a valuable building block for use in our sequence-based detections versus a standalone alert.
That's really cool, Christina. So basically, instead of having a crap ton of alerts, the detection is creating just one event of interest and then analyst isn't necessarily being alerted, but it's just in the index.
Exactly. You know, if this were to fire an alert every time that it made a detection on this activity, we'd have some really unhappy analysts, right? And as someone who came from the SOC and has experienced the pain of alert fatigue firsthand, the goal is to avoid that, and that's why we're really letting our hunting index do the heavy lifting for us, and doing that correlation for us, so that we don't have to manually do that ourselves.
Yeah. So with that hunting index, some alerts are just going to be noisy, right? And we understand that. And so we understand the correlating of them now, and that can help to cut down that noise. And that all sounds great, but how is this different than maybe a traditional approach versus kind of what that perspective shift would be today?
Well, yeah, so the traditional approach, I've seen SIMs before where you get alert after alert after alert, and you can try allow listing as best as you can, and then you're worrying about, well, am I allow listing too much? Am I missing some true positives here by doing this? So it's hard to kind of find that fine balance between a rule that's going to detect things, that you actually want to be detected, and still not inundate your analysts with too much, to work on to do correlation. So really, when we have the combination of several different atomic detections, like we're going over here, the fact that we're able to put those together in a sequence state and then just analyze based on that gives us much higher fidelity detection, where we don't have to manually look through each alert.
That makes total sense. Thanks.
So moving on, we have process injection here. And so in the first step, when we have the delivery of the malicious payload, maybe you don't have file creation or auditing logs available to you. But we can also look for behaviors that the malicious document itself is going to have. So in this case, we saw from DFIR that process injection was one of the behaviors. So here we're going to look for sysmod event 8, create remote thread, and we're again going to apply some basic filtering. So we're only getting rare occurrences of this, and we're not getting an event of interest for every single remote thread created, but just the rare ones. Next up, we have scheduled tasks. These were used to establish persistence. This one is fairly straightforward. We've got Windows event 4698 scheduled task created. You can also look for related event codes 4700 scheduled task enabled or 4702 scheduled task updated. And again, we are filtering down to rare occurrences. And this is just another reminder. So this is something that would potentially be very noisy, especially in large environments. Scheduled tasks on their own are not that unusual to see. So again, we're not being notified every single time we see a rare scheduled task, but this event of interest is being generated for our index. And then next up, we have defense evasion through modification of Windows Defender. And there are many ways an attacker can accomplish this. DFIR showed us specifically in their write-up that the threat actors were using PowerShell commandlets to do this. So if you have PowerShell script logging, you can detect this by looking for those specific PowerShell commandlets. However, if PowerShell is really logged down in your environment, you don't think they're using it, an attacker is not just going to take their ball and go home, right? If they can't achieve this through PowerShell. So you may want to look for other options to achieve the same result. So you can look for reg.exe, modifying registry settings for Defender, or you can look for service stop commands using sc or net.exe that are targeting the Defender service. And then finally, we have creating an account. So we saw from DFIR that the threat actors created a temporary account that they added to the administrators and remote desktop user groups. So with this use case, creation of remote admin account, we have several options for detection that we put in here. So one of them is we're looking for process creation for net.exe with the command line argument add. We can also look for event 4720, new account created. Or we can also look for 4732, which is user added to security enabled group, and then add some keywords there for the group names detailed in the report. And so we're going to normalize the fields. We're going to group these events by host and just filter down to the specified criteria before we send that on to our hunting index.
Awesome. Great. That's a fantastic breakdown, Christina.
So I have a really quick question here. If we can go back. So it does look like a lot of, quite a bit of work has been put into these. How would a detection engineer go about building and testing these kinds of detections in an efficient way?
So, well, we'll get to the testing a little bit later, but for building them, a lot of it is taking the intelligence from the community. And in my case, I'm very fortunate to have Kevin just deliver that information for me and tell me exactly what I need to know and what's being observed and what we can look for. So it is driven by intelligence, to tell us how our threat actors using these behaviors in observed attacks. And then sometimes it's getting a little bit creative and saying, like we use with that the Windows Defender. Sometimes we might have a very specific way of how a threat actor has done something, and certainly we want to detect based on those specific techniques. But sometimes it is getting a little bit creative and thinking like an attacker. And okay, well, let's say it doesn't work this way. What are some other ways that they could achieve the same goal? And so just having different options for an attack to have taken place, it gives us ideas on other ways that we can detect it. And then when we build our sequence-based detections, you'll see some of those coming up. We have options for okay, they could have done it this way, or they could have done it this way. They could have done it this other way. And so with our threat scenarios, we are able to account for some variation in their methods.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Jade, and the breakdown, Christina. Just to build off that just a little bit, we are giving away freebies to these detections at the end of the talk. So just email us, contact us. We'll send those out. We also included a text file just talking about things like Jade mentioned for how to build and things to do when you're deploying detection. So thank you for the question, Jade. So just back to the scenario real quick. Christina gave a great breakdown of all individual level identifiers. And of course, like you probably may say, individually, those themselves may be noisy. However, ways we can make that more high fidelity is to structure them in a logical sequence. So what we have here now is our Anvilogic no-code threat scenario builder, taking those identifiers that were broken down, sequencing in a way that's organized from the intelligence, and then creating that as your one alert. So you're not receiving those 5 separate alerts. You're getting one known sequence based on intelligence you received. and that creates a higher fidelity detection. And of course, it's flexible to accommodate if you didn't have any logs available for a certain type of activity Christina mentioned, or if you want to make it more high fidelity, you can definitely change or statements into ands, just to kind of have two identifiers or multiple ones having to trigger in order for the next sequence to continue. Additionally, as well, just to mention, the stages within the threat scenario are also separated by time to help give you more fine-tuned events as well. So that was one example, a very detailed breakdown by DFIR. Another one we want to talk about is just the process of going through intelligence, collecting the data, finding attack paths. So the one I want to present here is presented by Trey Ogg from Twitter. He's the operation manager at Huntress. He initially, when Proxy Nutshell came down, he provided his observation of an attack chain, which is the utilization of bits admin, followed by the execution of Screen Connect and Mimikatz to obtain credentials. From there, we see one avenue of post-exploitation behaviors following the initial exploit. So that was very important as we take all those attack sequences and we map out all the known reporting. And from there, we create our threat scenario based on that collected intelligence, seeing all those different paths. That way, we're not just focusing on the initial access, which is just initial exploit, rather, which is just one part of the attack chain. We're more so focused on the entirety of it. That's mainly, of course, because attackers aren't always changing their objectives. They are relatively stable, and we don't have to constantly worry about the next vulnerability being dropped, and God forbid, MOVEit drops another one this week, so that'll be put us in big trouble. We'll have some stability with our detections, just making from having detections that are focused on sequence behaviors.
And so, Jade, you asked before about how we go about testing our detections. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a problem that's faced by detection engineers. We want to validate that our use cases are working and detecting what we want to detect. And we have, there's various solutions for this. Like, you can leverage your red team, but for ongoing testing and maintenance, and sometimes just for just simple updates, that can require a lot of coordination, requires a lot of resource. So there are some other options we want to look at. And so how we've addressed that at Anvilogic is with an internal tool called Stormbreaker that helps us automate our testing. So what I can do with Stormbreaker is simulate adversary activity by building out a scenario with atomic red team tests or with publicly available exploits that we find on GitHub. So just like we've created a sequence-based scenario, we can create sequence-based emulations to validate that our use cases are working. We're able to leverage time here. So by adding a delay, we can be broad with our sequencing. And, so while this stage of the attack that we looked at from DFIR was completed within a few minutes, the combination of these behaviors on the same host would be an alert-worthy event, even if they take a little bit more time. So we have a whole life cycle. We take the community source threat intelligence. We build a sequence-based detection comprised of atomic level detections based on the information that we've gotten from the reporting. And then we emulate the threat using Stormbreaker to test and validate our scenarios. And so rather than looking at hundreds or thousands of events or alerts, I can have just one triggered alert to review that tells me all of the events that have occurred on a single host. So what we're looking at here is a much higher fidelity alert than any of those single detections that we were talking about before. I don't have to manually correlate. I'm just getting one digestible alert that is telling me that this is something worth investigating. All of these things happened in a specified time period on a single host. So this gives me a lot more to work with than having to go through each individual detection firing off and having to manually correlate that.
Awesome. Thanks again, Christina. So just wrapping up our key takeaways from our session today. Let's not chase low fidelity detections. Let's create those strong sequences of behaviors that are backed by community intelligence, correlate threat activity to create those high efficacy alerts, and then simulate threat actor behavior by using those intelligence we have to help validate the detections we deploy in our network. And before closing out, just want to make sure we give out thank yous to DFIR Report for always releasing detection-oriented content that are very well detailed to help us create detections and identify those attack sequences. Very much appreciated. Missy Elliott, always appreciate a great jingle. And then Pyramid Ping, brought by Dave Bianco, really helped illustrate the problems in detection engineering. If you liked our content today, please follow us on our blog and our website for threat reports. We publish threat intelligence threat intelligence weekly and daily. So please follow us and subscribe.
Awesome. Thanks, team. And yeah, that Forge comes out every Tuesday. That's the Forge report. So definitely sign up for that. And then we also have, don't forget, on July 6th, our Capture the Flag. So all of these sessions are always recorded on YouTube, anvilogic.com/workshops as well. Stay tuned for any text files that you want to receive from today's threat detections. In a follow-up email that were presented, we'll make sure to send you all of the information. And just another little plug for that Capture the Flag, we are going to be giving a $500 Amazon gift card to the winner. So anyone with a perfect score, if more than one person gets a perfect score, then we'll figure it out. No, we'll do a raffle for whoever is actually it gets the perfect score. And if there's multiple, then we'll make sure that the correct people get it. So stay tuned. We're really excited to have this detection engineering dispatch series. And Kevin and Christina, thank you so much for joining. Can't wait to see more. And everyone else, thanks for joining. Bye.